sense I've been getting, and you heard from Peter Stevenson and Keith Downey there, the two men who know better than anybody, the tone that they're giving suspects that Manchester United are winning this race. And the impression I get from the people I've been speaking to is that Sesko has preferred a move to Old Trafford all the way along. And that from RB Leipzig's point of view, they've been waiting for Manchester United to reach the level of bid that Newcastle have made. They haven't quite done it yet. There's still some distance off it, 5-10 million euros, depending on the exact figures. But it's pretty clear that he would rather go to Old Trafford. And I think that leaves Newcastle in a very, very difficult position. Even though they can offer Champions League football, even though they finished so much higher. They finished 5th compared with Manchester United's 15th last season. We know that Manchester United have been in turmoil. Newcastle have been a very steady ship under Eddie Howe. They've been consistently improving. And yet, that history of one of the world's biggest football clubs, I think, is probably going to tell in the end.
Is that it? Is that about what's gone before then? Because it doesn't make sense that Newcastle can offer Champions League football while Manchester United were, flirting with relegation last season, and yet they have the edge, apparently.
Maybe an everlasting thanks to Sir Alex Ferguson, possibly, because they are still Manchester United at the end of the day. But speaking to, Brian Mburmo, he didn't bother him about no European football. Does Champions League matter as much as people let on sometimes? A lot of the time it's a financial package, and it is playing for Manchester United. But look, it's not all over for Newcastle United at all, who, let's just say, since the takeover, have recruited ever so well. But, as Rob says, it does look as if now he is leaning towards Manchester United. But also got to mention the recruitment director, Christopher Favell, who was at Leipzig, who was speaking so highly about Sesko. I wonder if that's playing a key role in this as well. Not just Ruben Amorim, but Manchester United collectively.
But he's untried, untested, really, isn't he? And he's raw, clearly. What do you make of the sort of sums being spoken about forwards this summer?
This is absolutely fascinating because I haven't known a transfer window like this one where we've seen so many world-class strikers on the market, on the move, many of them coming to the Premier League. Let's show you some of the stats that we've been looking at, because I think this speaks absolute volumes. You can see some of the summer signings there and just how much we're talking about. There's a star, of course, next to Benjamin Sesko, because that's not completed yet. But you can see that Hugo Ekitike is at the top of that one at £79 million. Gyökeres, 63.5. Mateus Cunha, not a striker, he's a forward. Same with João Pedro, you'd say there. Look at the absolute bargain for Chelsea at the bottom, Liam Delap there with a £30 million release clause. I think it's right that you put him in this sort of category, this sort of company. I think he could be that good. But Mike, what I think is fascinating is, where do you get the value here with a striker? Do you get the value for somebody who is experienced like Gyökeres, 27 years old, been there and done it, scored...
Oito, Shopee! Assista Shopee Video. Shopee. Compre com cupom. Shopee. E frete grátis. 88 na Shopee. Compensa mais.
92 goals in 103 games for Sporting.
Yeah, in which league though?
In the Portuguese Premier League. Yeah. But he's been there and done it. He's 27. He's a proven goal scorer. Arsenal, of course, were looking at Benjamin Sesko. They were monitoring for more than a year, and they decided no. They've gone for Gyökeres instead. They had the ace trump, the trump card here. They decided Gyökeres. They wanted somebody ready-made to go straight into their side, try and help them win Premier League titles, Champions League. They didn't have time to wait around for maybe 2 years for Benjamin Sesko at 22 to prove what he can do in the Premier League and become that sort of player. Is that where you get the value, experience and goals? Or is it a younger player like Sesko with incredible promise who has got years ahead of him and may grow into that Manchester United side? Remember, Gyökeres has signed a 5-year contract at Arsenal. He will be 32 when that comes to an end. Arsenal have got no resale on him after that. He's worth virtually nothing. Look at Heung-min Son, who we're going to talk to about at Spurs shortly. £15 million, maybe 20 million that Spurs are getting for him. That's a snip for a player of his quality, but he's in the last stages of his career. So Arsenal can afford to write that off because they've got no resale. It doesn't matter. They need a player ready now. Manchester United, Newcastle perhaps don't have that luxury, which is why Sesko is more attractive to them. But I think how you look at that striker bingo is going to be fascinating. We know that every single football fan in this country is doing what we're doing now. They're looking at that list of strikers and going, right, who's got the best player? Who's got the best deal? Who's going to be the best in 2 years' time? It's a fascinating debate, and it's going to go on between Newcastle and Manchester United.
Where's the value then in this list?
Well, if we've got the opportunity to see his record at Leipzig over the last couple of seasons, look, we can debate all day long what's the bigger and better league, Bundesliga or the Portuguese league. I love watching the Bundesliga, but then you've got a lot of German experts, I was listening to Kevin Hatchard earlier, he said the real winners could actually be Leipzig because they're getting a lot of money for a very good player, but as Rob's mentioned, a 22-year-old. The Premier League is tough. But I'll go back to Christopher Vavell at Manchester United. He said in the Bundesliga website, extremely quick, great jump, strong in the air, and despite his height, he's very mobile and technically strong. So maybe paying a little bit over the odds, but if Manchester United can get out the players they want, we know the players who aren't wanted, and I'm sure that might go down possibly to deadline day. But this is a new look Manchester United, and if they do get him, it's a new look front three.
And also Sesko, by the way, if you look at the goals he scored in that Premier League, they're outside the box, they're inside the box. He scores every sort of goal. So I think that's what Newcastle and Manchester United are looking at. Huge potential. And that's worth paying a lot of money for because we know strikers come at a premium.
Michael just said there, we know the players that Manchester United want to offload. Has Rasmus Højlund joined that list?
Yes. Well, I think he does if Manchester United complete a deal for Sesko. And that's because Manchester United are not the Manchester United of old when it comes to the finances. They can't just afford to scoop up every bit of talent in European football and play them. We know finances are tight, and we know that if they complete this Sesko deal, they'll have spent £214.4 million already in this transfer window. They have to start offsetting some of that cost. Rasmus Højlund, they might get £35 million for, only half what they paid for him 2 years ago today, by the way, which speaks a lot about the business Manchester United have done in the last couple of years. But I think they have to start offloading players. I'd expect Garnacho to go if they can get decent money for him as well. We've heard about them being prepared to accept offers for Kobbie Mainoo and some players that are really part of Ruben Amorim's, first choice 11. Such is the state of their finances. So if they're spending £214.4 million and they do get Sesko, I think they'll look to try and move Højlund on.
But isn't Sesko in the same sort of situation that Højlund was in 2 years ago today? Aren't they similar, like raw, untried, untested, as I said?
And it didn't work. It didn't work with Højlund, let's be honest. And if you look at the figures involved, Mike, they're almost exactly the same. There's a parallel between Højlund and Sesko here. If you look at what happened with Højlund when he was signed a few years ago, he was £1 million cheaper than Manchester United have bid for Sesko now. The add-ons were £1 million cheaper than they were for Højlund as well. It is almost exactly parallel between the two players. Højlund was 20 years old when he moved, Sesko's 22. Both still very raw talents, is the way Manchester United are looking at it. Clearly, the bosses at Manchester United and the likes of Jason Wilcox, who is running the recruitment department, and Flavel, who obviously has got a big part in this as well, they're looking at it going, we think this guy is going to grow into our squad. We think with Brian Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha, throwing the crosses for him, making the passes for him, he's going to score a hatful of goals and he could be a Manchester United striker for years to come.
They thought that about Højlund, though, Michael. So I asked this last night. I'm going to ask you, is this a gamble, Sesko?
With the fee involved, yes. The fee involved, yes. But I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think for Manchester United, potentially a year out of Europe might actually be good for Ruben Amorim. He works with a smaller squad, the players he wants to work with, no Thursday, Sunday. Okay, might affect them financially a little bit, not majorly. A Conference League wouldn't have touched them financially. Maybe just a year, a reset. That's what Ruben Amorim... Do you remember Ruben Amorim said, I don't want to join a club midway through the season? He went on and on and on about it. I can see why in the end, with their finishing position. Yeah. But you can see there's something potentially working there, and that Manchester United reset, which starts next season.
One other quick word about Newcastle here, because I think a lot of people have got sympathy for Newcastle here on the number of players they've missed out on, and if they miss out on Sesko. And you're asking the question, well, why would he choose Manchester United over Newcastle with Champions League football and all that Eddie Howe's achieving up there? I think it's interesting. Newcastle could blow Manchester United out of the water if they wanted to here. Let's assume they're going to get £120 million for Alexander Isak if he moves to Liverpool. They've already turned down 110. Well, they could spend all of that money on Sesko if they want to, and Manchester United couldn't get close to it. And I'm sure RB Leipzig could say, listen, Benjamin, you're going to United or you're staying put with us. But they haven't done that. Why haven't they done that? Because they're not sure that he's worth that. There's no point in replacing Alexander Isak, tried and tested in the Premier League, a world-class striker has done it at this level, with a raw 22-year-old, if you're paying almost as much money for him. Newcastle know that Sesko has a certain value and they're not prepared to go beyond that. That, to me, says a club being well run.
I say Sesko does go to Manchester United, Rob. Does that mean Rasmus Højlund needs to pack his bags and go?
Almost certainly, yes. Because for a couple of reasons, Mike. I mean, the first point is that Manchester United are not flush for cash, and so if they spend all that sort of money on Benjamin Sesko, you're talking £74 million in total, that package. Can they afford to keep another player of his quality as his understudy? And by the way, there's a real parallel here, because Højlund signed for Manchester United 2 years ago to this very day. And the deal was almost exactly the same, £64 million plus £8 million in add-ons. For Sesko, we're talking about £65 million with £9 million in add-ons. And what Manchester United were buying then, they thought, was potential. A 20-year-old striker who hasn't quite lived up to that potential. They think Sesko is more of the finished article. He's not the finished article that Gyökeres is at Arsenal, by the way, for a similar amount of money, who's 5 years his senior. But they believe they're buying real potential that they think can replace and improve what they've had in Rasmus Højlund. So I'd expect Manchester United to try and sell Højlund, yes, £30 to £35 million. They'd take a big hit, maybe half of what they paid for him 2 years ago. But the question mark always for Manchester United and every other big Premier League club is, who's got the money to pay his wages? Højlund's not going to leave for a pay cut. Which of the clubs across Europe have got the sort of money that are prepared to pay Rasmus Højlund the wages he's on at Manchester United? Do any of those need a striker? So it's not as easy as you think just to say, yeah, we'll ship him out. But it's pretty clear that Manchester United, having spent, if this deal gets through, £214.4 million already in this window, they've got to start recouping some of that.
First league game of the season, Manchester United against Arsenal. Could it be Sesko lining up against Gyökeres? We'll see.
We will indeed. All right.
Manchester United have submitted a bid of £75 million plus £10 million in add-ons for RB Leipzig striker Benjamin Sesko. The offer reflects Manchester United's valuation of the player, and the club's belief is he wants to move to Old Trafford. Leipzig are yet to respond to the Premier League club's proposal. Manchester United were prioritising a move for the 22-year-old forward if they were to sign another striker this summer and had made informal contact with the Bundesliga club. Manchester United's offer comes after The Athletic reported on Monday that Newcastle United had submitted an improved bid for the striker. Their opening bid of £75 million plus £5 million in add-ons was deemed insufficient by Leipzig, leading Newcastle to increase it to at least £80 million. Newcastle have a long-standing interest in Sesko, with the club's pursuit of him coming amid last season's top scorer Alexander Isak expressing a desire to leave. Liverpool had an initial £110 million bid for Isak rejected. Manchester United have already strengthened in forward areas this summer with the additions of Matheus Cunha from Wolverhampton Wanderers and Brian Bumo from Brentford. Ruben Amorim's side also admired Aston Villa forward Ollie Watkins and explored the costs of a potential deals when considering a move for Sesko. The Manchester United hierarchy was reluctant to pay what they thought it may have taken for Villa to consider doing business. Sesko scored 21 goals in all competitions last season for Leipzig and has recorded 39 goals and 8 assists in 87 appearances for the German club since signing from RB Salzburg in 2023. His Leipzig contract runs until 2029. Arsenal also previously held an interest in the forward but signed Victor Gyökeres from Sporting CP in an initial £63.5 million deal this summer. Chelsea had admired Sesko for several years but opted to sign Liam Delap and João Pedro this window.
Você tá cansado de ser pobre? Então não pula esse vídeo. Ó, o negócio é o seguinte, gente, eu descobri um novo joguinho de celular que não é tigre, não é essas palhaçadas, tá bom? Que essa empresa é de uma empresa e essa empresa remunera todas as pessoas que jogarem e testarem esse jogo. É o seguinte, se você tá cansado de ser pobre, fica comigo até o final, porque tem gente recebendo esse valor aqui, ó, por hora, só jogando um joguinho no celular, gente. Isso daqui é uma nova renda para você fazer um extra e não tem nada a ver com essas palhaçadas que os influencers ficam te empurrando. É um novo joguinho que veio pro Brasil, tá explodindo, uma nova estratégia. Então se você tá cansado da sua vida, você quer mudar, eu recomendo você testar esse app, é de graça, tá? Você não tem que pagar nada, eu não vou te vender curso nenhum. Testa ele por 7 dias e se você não fizer pelo menos esse valor aqui, ó, em 1 hora, é só mandar um e-mail nesse e-mail que tá aparecendo aqui que eu vou mandar um pixão pra você. Faz o teste aí, gente. Incrível, você consegue fazer esse valor aqui por hora só com esse jogo.